Now we're taking another look here at the satellite imagery that we took a look at yesterday, and I think it looks even cooler today as we actually see a low pressure system forming there over California and nearby California. Obviously, the green is going to indicate more and more moisture. We see it kind of swirl up in this frame. Definitely a very interesting look, and it really shows you just how intense this atmospheric river really is. And we've seen major storms like this happen over the past week or so, and we're going to continue to see them over the coming weeks. So definitely no end in sight for that activity out west, at least not yet. Let's just move into the model guidance. We're going to kind of just move straight into what we normally talk about here. And as we take a look here, it is late night special today. So we're going to take a look at Monday on February 15th, which will be tomorrow from the time I am filming this video. And we see that major storm onshore of the west. It's a 999 right by Northern California, and what we're seeing is a lot of snowfall for the Cascade Mountains, a lot of snowfall throughout the Sierra Nevada mountains, and also the Rocky Mountains there, especially the central regions there in Idaho, Wyoming, and Utah, seeing the brunt of it. Now, even areas outside of those mountain ranges are seeing heavier rainfall, which is going to cause flooding concerns and, of course, landslides out there along the west. So definitely some implications. Outside of that, we've also had a 999 millibar low pressure center impacting the southeast, especially Florida and Georgia, where we've had multiple tornado warnings through the day today. It's been a very dangerous day. I hope that all of you are heeding official warnings and guidance from the National Weather Service and the Storm Prediction Center. Definitely a good idea in situations like that. Let's move this forward. Let's just go towards Tuesday here on the 6th. And what we see is that southeast storm goes ahead and moves offshore of the southeast, too far offshore to bring any impacts to the eastern seaboard. We're really not going to see much in the way of precipitation from this one. This storm that was over Northern California has pretty much moved into the eastern regions of Nevada, and we're seeing some snowfall still for the Sierra Nevada mountains, as well as areas in central and northern Nevada itself in the state of Nevada, and we're seeing again still rainfall in those lower elevation areas. Now, by the time we reach Wednesday on February 7th, we see a 995 over northern Colorado and a 1005 millibar low pressure center over northwestern Montana. And these two are working together to cause very widespread precipitation throughout the west, as you can see, all the way from the northwest, southwest coasts, inland, all the way towards the Rockies and even into portions of the plains, seeing rainfall and snowfall depending on the elevation that you are at. Let's just keep going, and by the time we're reaching Thursday here on February 8th, we see a 989 millibar low pressure center over Minnesota, 1002 over southern Colorado. So that secondary low right here in Colorado is allowing for a lot of this precipitation to still be happening along the western regions that have fallen behind this primary low, which I'm circling now, which is too far away to really lead towards much of impacts in the western states here. But that secondary low is what is keeping these impacts happening out there. We also see that as a result of this primary low, we do have a bit of a cold front underneath, so this is allowing for colder air to dive into the northern plains. And overall, we see snowy conditions for areas like eastern Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, areas in there definitely seeing some activity. Still, the jet stream by this point is a trough in the west, massive ridge in the east. As you can see, it's going to be very nice here over the eastern states on Thursday. Very not nice over the west is pretty much what I would say at this point. As we reach towards Friday here on February 9th, what we see is a 992 millibar low pressure center moving into eastern Canada there, still bringing some impacts to the United States. But not only that, we are also seeing a lot of heavier snowfall and rainfall in Canada, depending on where you're at. I think this is a perfect time to mention that we did have a major snowstorm blizzard over Nova Scotia, where they're seeing feet of snowfall, potentially 5 or 6 feet of snowfall total in areas there. Definitely been a very historic blizzard for them along that Canadian East Coast. I didn't want to go without mentioning that because that's probably the biggest thing happening in North America as far as weather is concerned, even over the next 10 to 15 days. Definitely a big time event, just an area that we typically don't cover very much, but definitely a very impactful system. Despite not having any low pressure systems, we do actually have plenty of precipitation for the western regions of Canada there, the northwest of the United States, and definitely as we reach towards the Four Corner states, we're still seeing snowfall in these parts as well. Definitely a very interesting situation. We do have a 999 millibar low pressure center over southeastern Canada there. and we're seeing rainfall kind of trending in underneath all of this due to a cold front that's taking place. So we're seeing a lot more cold air trying to push in eastward by the 10th, which again, the 10th is the date that we've been talking about for days now as the day to watch for that big change, and we are still seeing that. We're still on pace with these models to see that happen, even though it's 5 to 6 days away now. So confidence is constantly rising as we continue to see this show up on model guidance. Now things get very interesting, and this is when we're talking about a potential snowstorm for the Ohio Valley, Great Lakes, Northeast, and maybe even Mid-Atlantic here. Is we see it begin here over Texas, where we have a low forming in eastern Texas. Warm front out to the east, so thunderstorms trending in there for the deeper south states. A cold front trying to develop underneath things, and this is allowing for snowfall to mix in for the panhandle of Texas and through regions of Oklahoma. So a very far southern snowstorm. Take that with a grain of salt, as that's obviously unusual, but definitely something that is not impossible. We've seen it happen before, so definitely not an impossible type situation. And we see this 993 millibar low pressure center by Monday on February 12th taking place. Snowfall across Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan there. And even along the warm front boundary here, we see snowfall beginning for Pennsylvania, New York, and even southern New England perhaps. But warm air is going to be pushing northward during this, so expect some messy weather. It's mostly this corridor here to the north of that cold front that's looking for more consistent snowfall. That is until we see it start to transfer offshore. So this is usually a saving grace in these types of situations. Our primary low, or I should say previous primary low, is located now over about the Erie, Pennsylvania area. All of this low pressure, for the most part, has transferred offshore here of the kind of southern New England area as a 994 nor'easter now, and we see heavy snowfall trending in for northern Pennsylvania, northern New Jersey, New York State as a whole, and then almost all of New England seeing a lot of heavy snowfall from this. This looks classic when we're taking into consideration the previous storms that we've had this season so far. I definitely think that this is a fairly reasonable solution because it looks so similar to all of the storms we've had this year. That's boding well for my confidence on this one for sure. We see that this is still around by Tuesday the 13th afternoon here for the Northeast. Keep in mind, I mean, the warmer along the west here, this is going to be a classic positive PNA setup, and this is what's allowing for the cold air to dive eastward and snowfall to happen over the Northeast by the 12th, 13th time frame, which isn't that far away. That's not beyond 10 days or anything. That's about days 8 and 9, so definitely a plausible time frame there. And really at the end of this model run here, which we're taking a look at now, we're left with cold air in the east, brutally cold actually, matter of fact, and then we have this warm air mass set up over the west, which again is that positive PNA, which definitely bodes well down the road for more cold conditions and more snowfall opportunities. Now I want to take a look at the GFS. We're not really going to dive into anything that's happening currently or even over the next few days. I want to mostly move towards the 12th to see what this model is showing. And what we really get here is a much less amplified solution for that 12th potential storm. We do have the cold moving in. We just don't have an organized low really trying to take place. It's mostly just a blob of a little bit of moisture over the southeast and mid-Atlantic states here. Definitely doesn't look as amped as that European model does. We do, however, get a weaker low to set up around the same place south of New England, and we end up getting a minor snowstorm for New England on this model as well. But again, that European model has a much more major snowstorm, so we're considering that a possibility as well. There's a lot that's up for debate with this system. Now, we're going to get a lot more range with this particular model because we don't just get to 10 days like the European model. We actually can go up to 15 days on this model. So the European model ended here. We're going to continue moving forward on the GFS model. We get more cold air masses. This one is especially brutal around the 16th here on Friday, where we have a major trough set up over the east. Still, we have a ton of warmth, positive PNA out west, which is causing all of the cold and activity to kind of go over this area and pour into the east. This is especially an interesting setup because we have this primary low over Erie, Pennsylvania, again. And then we have a secondary low setting up offshore of North Carolina. So I'm curious to see if that takes on the characteristics of the primary low. And sure enough, by the time we're reaching the morning of Friday the 16th, we actually do see that happen here. This leads to heavy snowfall potential for the Mid-Atlantic, Ohio Valley, and eventually the Northeast, I'm guessing. Actually not, because it just heads directly south from that point. That's one of those wacky GFS things that tends to happen where it has a southeast bias, so it just takes the storms in weird directions. I mean, certainly not impossible, but definitely something that you want to watch for on the GFS. It's something it's known for doing, and it doesn't end up verifying a lot of the time. So we're going to watch that closely. At the end of this model run, it's not the coldest look in the east, I will say, by the 20th, but we do have cold around, especially in the northeast. So this is definitely something that I feel semi-optimistic about. But this is very far out. I mean, 384 hours out is considered the long range here. So definitely something that we want to take with a grain of salt. I wouldn't put too much confidence in this at this point. You know, mostly it's the 7 to days, let's call it 12. Where we have some idea of potential trends, and then beyond day 12, it's really not looking as confident, especially on a deterministic model, which the GFS model and the European model would fall under that category. Later on, we are going to take a look at the European ensemble model, which is a particular type of model where it takes about 30 opinions and kind of mashes it into one mean average. Those particular models we can actually look at and take some things away in the days 10 through 15, maybe even beyond. So definitely we're going to take a look at that, which will give us a little bit of a better insight for the long range. Total precipitation, I mean, no surprise that things are beginning to pick up for the Ohio Valley here. Mid-Atlantic, and then the Northeast, which is what we've been calling for a long time now. Also, no surprise that we're still seeing activity in the West, still seeing activity in the deeper South, but really the highest trending area that's trending up is going to be this particular region here. Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, and the Northeast. They're on the uptrend as we reach this new pattern. Total snowfall in the European model, tons out west, no surprise there. We're not even going to spend too much time on it, but for the plains into the Ohio Valley and Great Lakes, we have quite a bit here with a bullseye of about 10 to 15 inches there in these pink areas. And then for the Northeast here, we actually get 10 to 15 inches, maybe even pushing on 20 for some of the Green Mountains, the White Mountains, and the Berkshires there, as well as the Catskills of New York. So certainly something to watch for in that Northeast area. This would be a particularly major snowstorm, again, happening likely around the 11th, 12th timeframe if it verifies. This is going to be something that we watch day over day over day, of course, so be sure to subscribe, of course. The GFS model, as we noted, is much less amplified. But we do get that kind of spread around snowfall. So it's less total snowfall, but we get more areas impacted. But I think it's an overall wacky solution, so I'm not putting too much stock in this one for sure. But definitely consider it a possibility, although just not as likely as the European model, I don't think, just because it does that wacky turn to the south. Not to say that the storm can't be weaker. I think it's mostly the direction that I'm talking about, where that takes on a wacky turn, of course. Now, the temperature pattern I want to really dive into, this is, again, that European ensemble model, 30 opinions taken into one mean average, and this is the upper air temperature pattern. This really impacts the temperatures at the surface because cold air sinks. So when we have cold upper air pattern, that sinks down to the surface and causes colder surface temperatures. When you have warm upper level temperatures like we have here in the eastern states and eastern Canada, that is going to be more of a thing where we don't see the cold air sinking. We actually see a lot less of that happening and overall warmer temperatures at the surface as a result. And this is by the 8th. Let's look at the 9th, the 10th, and then this is when the cold starts to move eastward, just as we've been talking about. And we see the 12th, 13th, 14th. Look at all the cold spreading eastward. This is the 14th here on Wednesday. And then even by the 16th, things are looking even colder on this model with some pretty high confidence. A lot of times we talk about with ensemble models where they get averaged out, quote unquote, is what I call it. And really what that is when you have 30 different opinions put into one, you're going to see some calling for warmer temperatures oftentimes, even when the majority is calling for cold. But this is overall very high confidence seeing these higher numbers here. So definitely we're assuming that a vast majority of the members are on board with this type of a solution. And it lasts all the way through about the 19th at least. So definitely a very long range look. But we have these ensemble models supporting cold in the east for pretty extended amounts of time here. And just to show you what I'm talking about here is just an example of half of those European ensemble members. There's actually a total of 50. I got it wrong. So there's a total of 50 members in this ensemble model, and it takes the mean average of all of these opinions. Right now, we're only taking a look at 25 of them. We can see member 1, 2, well, actually, it goes like this: 1, 2, 3. This one happens to be 6. And what we see is that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, let's see, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. I know this is repetitive, but we're just going through it together here. 18. I would say about 18 of the 25 calling for cold in the east. And then we have about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 6 calling for warmer temperatures in the east. So that's what we're talking about here. And oftentimes you'll see maybe a bit of a 50-50 split where it's about, 12 and a half or so members showing warmth and then the other half showing cold. And that's definitely when we're taking a look at a very average outlook, as I called it. Because if you take the mean average of that, it's going to be near normal conditions. But really, there's no member even showing average conditions. It's just, half calling for warm, half calling for cold is going to average out at about average. So that's the problem with ensemble models. So it's important to break down each individual member and kind of see what they're actually calling for, which I tend to do oftentimes, just to get an idea of where the confidence is with the overall ensemble for that ensemble model. I know this is a little boring for some people, but I just wanted to break it down. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe as we do upload weather videos every single day. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it, leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.